Hi everyone! This is the dress that we're going to be making. I had a lot of fun making this dress up. We just kind of made it up as I went along. And I hope that I can inspire you to do the same thing as you watch my videos. Crocheting is fun and it's easy. You just have to have the fundamentals down. So this little dress has a shell edging around the yoke. It has a cinched waistline with some ribbon. And it has a shell skirt. And this size that I made is for a 12 to 18 month old. So the supplies you'll need is 8 ounces of yarn, and I love Caron Simply Soft, so I chose soft green and white. You'll notice that these come in 6 ounce. You'll need just a little bit over 1 ball each, so about 8 ounces of yarn of each color. And then a coordinating ribbon. This ribbon just happened to coordinate perfectly with these 2 colors of yarn, and I got this at Joann's. There's the... There you go, now it came into focus. If you wanted the same color, there's the SKU number. You'll need a size G hook, 1 5/8 inch flat button for the back, and a yarn needle. And if you would like, you can put some embellishments on the front, maybe some little rosettes or something. But I didn't think it was necessary. I go for simple all the time. Simplicity is beauty to me. And so just come along and we'll make it together. Okay, for your foundation chain around the neckline, you're going to start with a chain 50. And then you're going to do half double crochets. So you will skip these first 2 chains, yarn over, and do a half double crochet into the 3rd chain. And after you have the 3 loops on your hook, you just pull through all 3. That's a half double crochet. And so you will continue on doing half double crochets all the way to the end of the row. Alright, we just finished the first row. So we are going to chain 1 and turn your work. And this is where you're going to start taking your increases. Increases is when you put 2 or more stitches into 1 stitch, and it will make the next row bigger. So whenever I say increase, it implies that I am doing 2 stitches into 1. So you will skip this first stitch, and we're going to take a half double crochet into the next one. And this will be your first increase. So take 1 more half double crochet into that same stitch. And there you go. And take 1 half double crochet into the next stitch. And then the next one will be your increase again. And that's the pattern that you will repeat to the end of the row, is 1 increase, 1 regular half double crochet, 1 increase, 1 regular half double crochet, all the way down. Okay, so this is the end of your 2nd row, and don't take an increase on the end of your 2nd row because you want the end to be nice and straight. So your last increase is right here, and then a half double crochet and a half double crochet, and then this is where you'll change your colors. And I just tied a little square knot right here, right next to the end of the stitch. And you can either tie a knot or not, it's your personal preference if you want to, but this is where you will chain 2 and turn your work. And I like to catch my ends up in my work so that I don't have to weave them in later with a needle and a hook or something. So you just pull them right here and you'll catch them in your stitches. So start taking your double crochet, skip this first stitch, go into your next one, and you see how I'm catching the ends in there? And there's your first double crochet. And every stitch down to the end will be a double crochet. And you're catching the ends as you go. Okay, we just finished the 3rd row, and if you count the chain 2 that we just did as your first double crochet, then you've made 70 double crochets so far. So you will chain 1 and turn. And this row's easy. You just take 1 single crochet into every stitch all the way across. 1 single crochet. Okay, this is what your collar looks like so far. It should have this nice round shape to it. So for the next row, you're going to change colors again and tie a knot and then chain 2, and that counts as your first double crochet. And remember to catch your ends up in the stitches that you're taking. Skip this first stitch right here and go into your next stitch and do your first double crochet. Now when you're done catching the ends up, you're going to need to pull them so that they don't bunch out of this side. Okay, so after you've done that first double crochet, the next one is where you will take your increase. So 2 single crochets into the same one. And then you will repeat that to the end of your row, taking 1 double crochet, an increase, and 1 double crochet to the end. Now again, at the end of this row, don't end in an increase. Your increase was right there, and then you have 2 normal double crochets. So chain 1, turn your work, and then just skip this first stitch, and that just makes your corners nice and square, your edges. Go into the next stitch and take a single crochet and do 1 single crochet all the way down. And if you are making this dress for a larger child, like 18 to 24 months, on these single crochet rows, this is where you will take a half double crochet for an 18-month-old or a double crochet all the way down for a 24-month-old, and that will increase the size of the yoke and it'll fit better for that size of a child. So just 1 single crochet all the way down, and this size that I'm making is about a 9 to 12 month size. Alright, at the end of this row of your single crochets is where you will change your colors again. Chain 1, turn your work, pull your ends back behind again and catch them in, and you will take 1 double crochet into every stitch. Remember to skip that first stitch. That's what makes your edges nice and straight. Pull the ends real tight and start taking your double crochets, 1 into every stitch all the way down. Okay, at the end of this row, you will do like you've done on other rows. Just chain 1, skip a stitch, and go into the next one with a single crochet. And remember, these single crochet rows that you're doing, this is where you can make the yoke bigger if you are doing it for a larger child. So this is where you could do a half double crochet or another row of double crochet. But for my size, I'm going to continue doing the single crochet all the way to the end of the row. Okay, for this row you will change colors again and chain 2. Turn your work, skip your first stitch, and catch your ends up into the back, and do 1 double crochet all the way down. Okay, at the end of this row, you will chain 1 and turn your work, skip your first stitch, and do a single crochet. And this is where you're going to, this is going to count as your first single crochet right here. So this is your second one, and this is your third. In the 4th stitch, you're going to take an increase. So do 2 single crochets. And that's the pattern you will repeat into the end, by taking 3 single crochets, an increase, 3 single crochets, and an increase all the way to the end. Okay, so you finished your row of single crochet. Put the collar together like this and join it, the bottom stitch, with a slip stitch. Cut it just about 3 inches or so and change your color, and then we'll come back. Okay, so after I changed my color, I chained 3, and into that very same stitch, that's where I'm going to make my shell, my first shell. So do 2 more double crochets, and those of you who watch my videos know I always make my stitches too tight and I sometimes struggle with it. So then this is where you do a chain 1, and then into the same hole, this is where you'll do 3 more double crochet. Two, and there's the third one. You would think after all this time I would learn to make my stitches looser. Okay, so there's your first shell. Those chain 3 counted as your first double crochet, so I'm going to say that's a double crochet. Double, 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 chain 1, double, 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 and then you will skip 4 stitches. So you have to count this little stitch under here as the first one. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yarn over and go into the stitch, and then that's where you will make the next shell. Do that all the way around, skipping 4, doing 3 double crochets, chain 1, and 3 double crochets all the way around, and then you skip 4. Okay, so I'm getting ready to make my last shell, and as often happens when I make up dresses, I just wing it. There's not 8 spaces left here, which is what we would need if we would skip 4 in the front and 4 in the back. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to center this shell in the space that we have left. So I'll skip 2, and I'm going to put the shell right there. And you can just do that when you're making stuff up. That's what I love about crochet. You just make it work and it still looks beautiful. Okay, so finish up your last shell and then we'll come back. So you can't even tell that we kind of squished that last shell in there. So in this third chain that you did from the beginning, just put a slip stitch to connect your shells. And then you are done with that row. So cut this, and then take a yarn needle and weave this end in. So just pull it out and weave it in along the back side, and then you're done with the yoke. Alright, now we're ready to start the foundation chain of the skirt. So what I did is I tied a little knot right here, and this is the wrong side that we're working on. This is the right side, and so flip it over and we're going to be working on the wrong side. So tie a knot and pull up a loop, and then just take a single crochet to start your foundation chain. And you're going to be working on this row of previous double crochets that we did. So fold down your shells. We don't want to take our stitches in the edges of our shells or else it won't stick up like a ruffle around the yoke. So just fold them down. And again, we're working on the wrong side that you can see right here. So there's my first single crochet, and into that same stitch take another single crochet, and then that's my first increase right there. Into the next one, just take 1 single crochet and then another increase. So it goes increase, 1 single crochet, increase. Now this is the middle of the shell right here. This one's a little tricky to get your hook underneath it. Just take it like this and pull your yarn through. And you will keep doing this pattern for about 3 shells. Do that for about the length of 3 shells. After you've done your length of 3 shells, and stop in between the 3rd and 4th, don't go all the way over to the 4th. You're going to take your underarm stitches. This is what makes the armhole. So if you're doing this for a smaller size child, just chain 5, and that should be a big enough size hole. I'm doing the middle size, so I'm going to chain 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If you're doing like a 2T, you could chain 9. You don't need it to be as you don't want it to be loose on them. So this is where you're going to connect it to your other side. So you're going to count 6 shells over, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you're going to line them up on top of each other just like that, so you can tell where you're going. So there's your 6 shells, and you're going to go in between these shells just like you stopped in between your 3rd and 4th. And then grab a piece of yarn and pull it through. Sorry, my stitches are always too tight. And then there, you've connected your armhole just like that. And then you'll continue on this way. Start right here with an increase just like we were doing on the other side. And then keep going with your every other one increase. Okay, so I've crocheted across about 7 shells. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and I've stopped right in the middle. And you could have different amount of shells that you crochet over. Just make sure that your edge is having 6 shells, 3 on top of each other right there, and then that's your sleeve. So we're going to do just like we did before, and I'm going to chain 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Line it up again so you know where you're going. Put your hook through after the 6th skipped shell and pull through a loop. Just like that. Just connect your chain to the other side. And then do an increase right here. And then continue on with your foundation chain until you're back where you started from. Alright, we're back where we started from. And there's just a little gap right here, so just finish it off by doing a few more single crochets and take another increase right there in your gap. Alright, and then there we're back to where we were. And this row is going to be starting some double crochets. So we need to build up to the first one by chaining 1. And then you will just take 1 double crochet into every stitch that you just made of your foundation chain. And we're just doing this row of double crochets because it's not going to show underneath your little shells. So we don't want to start our row of shells on our skirt yet. This is just easier than the shells. So if you want to do a shell row here, you can. But since it's not going to show, I'm just choosing to do a simple double crochet. 1 double crochet in every row around, including under the sleeve. You will just take 1 double crochet into every chain. When you come back around to the beginning, this is your chain 2 that you took right here. Do a slip stitch right in the beginning of your chain 2, or right on the top of your chain 2, and then build up your first double crochet by chaining 2 again, and then in your next stitch you'll take a double crochet. Sorry, you can probably hear the garbage truck outside. So that counts as your first 2 double crochets. And we are making on this row the ribbon row, so we're going to be making little holes for the ribbon to go through. So after your 2 double crochets, chain 1, skip 1, and do another double crochet. do another double crochet, and there's 2, chain 1, skip 1, and continue on with this pattern. And there's your little holes for your ribbon to go through. When you come back around to the beginning, chain 1 right here, and then take a slip stitch on the top of the chain 2 that you did over here. And then that ends your ribbon row perfectly. This is where we're going to start our first row of shells. So we need to build up to our first double crochet by chaining 2, and that will count as your first double crochet. Chain over, or yarn over, and in the same stitch do another double crochet, and there's 3 double crochets, chain 1, and 3 more double crochets. 1, 2, 3. So there's your first shell right there. So wherever this first shell ended, just skip those first stitches because we're going to be starting to make our shells in the holes right here. So take your next shell in this spot of each hole that you made for your ribbon round. That's where you will be making your shells. And you don't crochet one in between, you just go straight from this shell to this shell, all the way around. At the end of your first shell row, go into the top of your chain 2 and take a slip stitch, and that's how you'll end the first row. Cut off 4 or 5 inches and pull it through, and then this is where you're going to change your color right here. After you've tied off your new color, I'm going to actually switch the way I'm working because I just realized that I was working from the wrong side, and I like the way that this crochet looks when you work it on the right side. So I'm just going to switch it around. It doesn't really matter, it's just a personal preference of how you like your stitches to look. If you like that look, then you can continue working on the wrong side, but I like that look. So I'm going to switch it around, pull up a loop through your first shell, and do 2 chains. And that's your first double crochet of your shell. And this is the process that you will repeat for every row. You will just end every row with a slip stitch like I showed you, change your color, draw up a loop through the first shell, and then every other row you're going to continue changing color. And you will continue making your shells in between the previous row's shell, right where you took your single crochet. That's where you're making your shells. So continue to make alternating rows of shells for as long as you would like the skirt to be. Alright, after you finish the skirt, which I ended up doing 22 rows of shells, but you can do as many as you like, face the dress towards you with the right side out, and this is the back neckline. Tie your white right here on the left hand side of your neckline and pull up a loop and then do a chain. And this end you can just weave in with your yarn needle into the inside. And just take single crochets along the neckline, and it doesn't really matter where you pull up your single crochets through, just as long as they're kind of evenly spaced. and take your single crochets all the way until you come up to about the end of this, until you come to the bottom of this first row right here. Alright, once you come to about this point on the side of the back neck opening, chain 4, because this is going to be your button loop. If you want another button down here, then you would just chain 4 and do a little loop right here as well. But I think one button is enough for the back of this dress. So after you chain 4, bring your hook back in, and then there's your little loop. And on the corner right here, you're going to take 2 single crochets just so that you can round the corner nicely. And then here on the neckline is where you can have freedom to do whatever decorative neck edge line you would like. I'm going to do just a plain single crochet. But you can do a picot edging, you can do a shell edging. I have a video on my YouTube channel called How to Do Decorative Edging, that if you'd like to check that out. So when you come back to this corner, do the same as you did on this corner, taking 2 single crochets around the edge just so that you can round the corner nicely. And then take your single crochets all the way back down to this point, and then we'll come back. Okay, so I've come all the way around my neckline and all the way back down, and you can just cut off, leave a few inches, pull it through. And as often happens when I'm just making stuff up, I see a better way to do it. So rather than weaving this end in from the other side, just take it and tie a square knot, and that'll close it up better than doing stitches across the bottom wheel. Do you see how that just closed up that hole? So pull it pretty tight, right over left, left over right for a square knot. And now you can take these ends and weave them in on the inside. And that makes a nice closing at the bottom. Now this crochet 4 right here is for a 5/8 size button, 5/8 inch. If you have a bigger one, you might want to add 1 chain to that. Then just take a piece of yarn and sew on your button right there, and that'll hook it up for you. You don't have to do this next step. This is a matter of personal preference. The little shells on the front collar, I want them to stick up, but I don't want them to stick up that much. So I'm going to take some of my yarn, or you can take some thread, whatever your personal preference. If you're looking at the dress with the right side facing out, I'm only going to do this section of the front collar right here. So I'm going to tie a knot on the inside right here, right next to the armhole. And I just took a tiny little tack with my yarn needle right there. Make it go back to the inside. And then bring it up to the next shell. Just try to make it so that you don't pull so hard that it's obvious that you sewed down the shell. Just do it very, very light tack. That way it'll still stick up under the edges but not fold all the way up. And just do that to this side over here, and then tie a knot and weave your ends in on the inside. Okay, what I did is I cut off a 3-foot section of ribbon, and you can see this one matches perfectly. I just got it at Joann's, but it has the soft green and white flowers on it. It matches the yarn perfect. So you just find a complementary ribbon, start in the middle back, weaving it around to this side, and then bring the other side, weaving it around to this side, and then tie a little bow in the front. But don't tie a hard knot, because every time you get your child in and out of the dress, you'll probably have to take this knot undone. And when you wash it, you'll probably have to retie the bow as well. So just tie as tight of a knot as it takes to keep it on your child while they're wearing it. And then cut the ends